Your imagination can do anything from basic thought experiments to inventing genius works in your head. Today, I'm going to be ranking imagination on a scale of 7 levels, and you might actually be higher on this scale than you think. Level 1. Aphantasia. Now this isn't necessarily a level, but it's the lack of visual thoughts. So for example, if you close your eyes and you imagine an apple, you might actually see an apple. Even if the apple isn't very realistic, you will probably see an apple in your mind. Now there are people that have no visual images. For example, if they close their eyes and try to imagine an apple, they can't formulate an image of it. They just think in a concepts. Think of your mind as a screen. Some people can see the screen very clearly. Some people can't even turn it on. That's essentially what aphantasia is. Now it isn't necessarily a disability. It's not like it doesn't stop you from having critical thinking skills. It just proposes a few disadvantages, and you can even train it to get normal phantasia or hyperphantasia. I'll explain what that is later, by the way. Level 2 is basic thinking. Now this is pretty much what you do in your everyday life. It's how your brain processes the world. Okay, let's take this video for example. You watching this video actually requires a lot of processing from your brain. The thing is, you don't think about most of the stuff because it's just patterns. Okay, here a good example. You can probably read English or whatever language you're used to very clearly. But what about this? This is sheet music. Now some of you guys might be able to read sheet music, but for the people who can't, this is very complex. Or is it? The thing is, most languages are actually more complex than reading sheet music. Even songs like this. The only reason it feels like reading language and reading words are simple is because your brain has had so much interaction with this language, but pretty much every main pattern has been distinguished. For example, when you read a sentence, you probably don't think of every tiny letter. You probably don't think, oh, is this past tense? Oh, should this word be capitalized or not? No, you just instantly understand it based on patterns. Level 3, deliberate thinking. This is essentially what you do when you sit down and have to make a decision, or when you need to brainstorm ideas for a project. This is the level you use probably every day. For example, what are your opinions on this video? Comment down below. What decisions could you have done better today? It's things like this that I consider level 3. Now this level isn't special or unique, but it is arguably the most important one for making good decisions and navigating life. Number 4, critical thinking skills. Now this level is what I consider being smart to be. It's basically the ability to understand things like logical fallacies, cognitive biases, wisdom, etc. For example, if you have to make a decision but you have critical thinking skills, you probably use a lot of logic in that decision. Now you don't necessarily have to understand a lot of technical stuff to have critical thinking skills. This usually comes from just experiencing a lot of things in your life and learning from it. The key word is learning from it, because if you make the same mistake 100 times, you don't learn anything from your experiences. But you've actually learned way less than someone who has had 10 experiences, but he learned from all of them. Here's a good example. Have you ever thought that your old self was naive and lacked critical thinking you had now? For example, some people look back at themselves a long time ago and notice how far behind they were compared to your current day. And the reason I put this at level 4 is because it's very trainable if you want to develop it. It's not necessarily something that you're born with. Critical thinking skills should be developed by anyone. If you want to make good decisions in life, I do recommend it. It is trainable and you're not born with it. Level 5, thinker. Now this is where we get interesting. This is where we actually get to the good stuff. Now a thinker is essentially someone who constantly uses his imagination for many things actually. For example, some people can get bored and imagine entire worlds in their head. They can brainstorm entire projects and be very intrinsically motivated. Okay, here's a personal experience. So 2 years ago, I was playing a knockoff game, Block Studio. It's a knockoff Minecraft. The game doesn't matter. And it was one day I was bored. I had nothing to do, so I just sat down. And then I thought of an idea. It was an idea for a server in game. Basically, I wanted to create a world. So anyways, I sat down for probably multiple hours. I was just thinking of it and simulating it in my head. I got really excited, and anyways, the next few days I spent making that in game. So basically, that server that I thought of when I was bored, I made it in game, and it actually turned out to be a success. It got, well, depends on what you count as success, but it had an average of 20 players online. Anyways, it was my first successful server in the game. Anyways, this is the best example I have of level 5. In fact, it was Albert Einstein that said logic can only take you from point A to point B, but imagination can take you everywhere. Now I cannot overstate this quote enough because it is so true. I guarantee you the best ideas come from stuff like this. Alright, level 6. Now this is someone that deliberately trains their imagination. Most people are actually unaware of the stuff that it takes to train your imagination, or that you can even use your imagination. Now this is essentially just deliberately training stuff like critical thinking skills, hyperphantasia, etc. Okay, for example, people in this category might be able to do stuff like simulating a piano in their head. I know that sounds very complex and impossible, but things like that are possible, but it just takes practice. It's actually kind of insane to me that like less than 1% of the population even know, so you can train to hyperphantasia. Most people don't even know what hyperphantasia means. I just realized. For those of you guys wondering, hyperphantasia just means having a very vivid and realistic imagination. So things you can train for your imagination are realism, like how realistic it looks, critical thinking skills, and logic. Now, logic doesn't destroy creativity, or creativity doesn't destroy logic. If you use your imagination, they pretty much work together. For example, if you reach a really high level of imagination, you could even practice skills in head. For example, if you're learning a piano piece, you could actually train in your imagination if you understand the piano well enough. Level 7. Now, this is a huge jump because this is the level that geniuses like Mozart and Nikola Tesla reach. So this is essentially similar to level 6, but more advanced. Here's an example. Nikola Tesla was able to invent entire things in his mind, to the point where he reported that he didn't even need to use blueprints. I'm not kidding, you can look this up. And a lot of musical geniuses could also simulate things in their head. For example, Mozart was able to perfectly write down songs that he thought of without having to rewrite them either. So the only difference this makes from level 6 is essentially having a very trained imagination, or you can even have it naturally, but essentially having a really high imagination and a skill to apply it on. For example, if you have really good critical thinking skills, that's great, but if you have a specific topic that you like to think about a lot, that's even better. So this is essentially level 6, but having something that you're very knowledgeable about. For example, Mozart had an insane amount of knowledge on the piano. I think MrBeast is kind of an example of this. Okay, I'll give you guys one example real quick. Let's say you study human psychology. I mean like a lot. Like you study psychology pretty much like 8 hours a day, and you like to simulate things in head. Well, in theory, you could reach a level to where you can perfectly simulate other people in your mind. For example, you could just imagine a personality and instantly simulate that personality. And again, this is no easy feat to reach. This would require intense focus on one thing and having a trained imagination. What makes it so rare for people to reach this level is that 99% of people don't even know that you can train your imagination. And most of the people that do know you can train imagination don't even care about it. And even most of the people that do care about it don't have a skill that they work on. Even the people that do have a skill that they can work on, they don't have it at an intense level yet. By the way, just so you guys know, this scale is kind of made up. I hope it did give you guys some insights about thinking skills.